Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Justin Helms at Husch Blackwell. I'm an AI solutions strategist. And before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your audience console, there are a few application icons. You can use those throughout the program today. If you have any questions during the webcast, please submit them via the question box. We'll try to address any we can, but if fuller answers are needed or we run out of time, I'll answer those later on via email. Auto-generated captions are available for today's program. To turn on closed captions, click the CC button in the bottom right corner of the media player box. This program does not qualify for legal education hours. There is a certificate of attendance available for attending today's program, and you could get that by clicking on the CEU icon at the bottom of the screen. A certificate of attendance will also be emailed to you along with a recording of the webcast for watching and sharing later. Toward the end of the program, please be sure to complete our short survey. We use your feedback to plan future programs that are applicable to your business needs. All right, that's it for housekeeping items. Let's get started with today's program. On the agenda today, we're going to talk about several items, the first of which is the case for innovation, just a few slides around that. Then we're going to dive into the specific tools at Husch Blackwell that we use and some adoption insights around those. We're going to give special focus on Copilot, as they've recently released some great resources for the legal community. We're also going to spotlight some awesome stories that we've experienced here at the firm and dive a bit into these new type of models called chain of thought models and what they can do. Lastly, we'll touch on generative AI and outside counsel guidelines. Thomson Reuters kindly provided some information from surveys they had done recently. In fact, over 1,000 entities were surveyed, and in their market insights product, this slide and one more tell an awesome story, one that's quite the imperative. Clients rate their firms across several different types of satisfaction, and importantly, law firms, the less than 1/3 of clients that they see their firms, the firms that they use most, delivering low in efficiency, innovation, and fair price for value. So a third of clients are saying that about the firms they use most. And half of clients see strong room for improvement in those areas. And that really matters because when you think about satisfaction ratings, there is a very large correlation between firms that are found as innovative and the remaining types of satisfaction clients encounter: quality of advice, fair price for value, efficiency, their communication, etc. If you're high on innovation, there's a big likelihood you're going to get highly rated on the other factors. But the news doesn't stop there. Earnings are also affected. Firms rated a 9 or a 10 out of 10 in innovation earn 34% more of a client's external legal spend than firms rated a 6 or lower. So being innovative in the legal space obviously affects client satisfaction across the entire spectrum, but it also can affect where clients are making their investments. And in the generative AI space, we see the technology helping us being innovative in a lot of different areas. Some notable ones on screen, really heavy hitting ones on the left, highlighted in bold. We're finding that generative AI is helping us search through materials, interrogate materials, compare materials, summarize them, extract text from them, draft them, and also just to conduct legal research using natural language inquiries rather than traditional keyword types of searches. There's a lot of other areas that we find AI helps. I'm giving some honorable mentions there on the right. But indeed, when we train folks on how to use the technology in a firm, we don't start from a particular platform or even a list of what it can do. Instead, we really want to get the person thinking about what are the tasks they need to achieve that day. And that's a really good starting point, because imagine then you had a digital assistant at your side. What would you ask them to do and help you with as you think about satisfying those tasks? And it's great because AI provides an amazing draft to start from when you don't have one. If you already have your work nearly completed, it can give an amazing second set of eyes. And lastly, if you're not even sure where to start, you just need something to noodle with, it can provide great thought partnership. Now, we've all seen this slide from Legal Tech Hub. Apologies, there is a slight graininess. I think this did occur once we uploaded the PowerPoint file to this platform. But the story of this slide is that there's a lot of vendors standing up in all these different areas of the legal landscape. Now, this presentation is not meant to dive into a lot of those, but indeed, you can tell our world is seeing increasing investment in these spaces. And at our firm, we are using some of these today. On the far left of this slide, we're showing the commercial applications that we've made investment in and rolled out enterprise-wide. We also build custom capabilities that we don't find vendors necessarily satisfying, but first to focus on those commercial aspects. On the very far left, you're seeing our self-service stack. These are tools that you can just log in and use yourself. There's no need for IT support or help desk. It's just log in and go. Co-counsel and Westlaw's AI-assisted research platform get a lot of great use out of those. Practical Law is also in that vein. Microsoft Copilot and also Kira. Sometimes, though, these platforms serve best when it's not a self-service, but more of a back-end automation. And we use a lot of platforms in that area as well. Co-counsel with their API, Pattern Builder Max, Power Automate, Microsoft Azure, and Copilot Studio, which we'll get to even further depth in today's conversation. But it does take a team of very skilled individuals to bring those platforms and their capabilities to fruition. And that's where our data science team and DevOps teams really shine. We're calling attention to some of their tech arsenal there on the bottom right. But indeed, that's just a sampling of the tools in their toolbox. And they come out with some amazing internal bespoke solutions, such as Prompt Composer, our firm's version of ChatGPT. And specific offerings that we'll find in those success stories we'll mention later on, really highlighting their awesome support. But that's a little bit about our house, if you will, of AI at the firm. Taking a bit of a deeper dive into those self-service platforms, we're going to talk about each one of these in particular. Our first one up to bat is Westlaw's with its AI-assisted research. We do train folks at the firm that if your attempt is to get an answer to a legal research question, strongly consider using a system like Westlaw AI-assisted research. The reason being, whatever answer it gives you, it must ground it in existing case law, regulations, and statutes and cite to those sources. Those sources have to exist. So it's less prone to making up sources when it provides an answer. We've all heard the horror stories online of firms being sanctioned, and this helps us check one of those important boxes to try to reduce that risk. It doesn't mean it gets it right all the time. However, at least you know when it says, click this link to this case, that case actually does exist, and you can bring it up on screen. Uses to date, we've got about 28,500 uses just of the Westlaw AI-assisted research function. Next up to bat, and I apologize about the table. Again, it's one of the few quirks we're seeing when we uploaded it to the platform, but the table does show an amazing, it does provide excellent clarity around those skills that co-counsel helps us with as a sibling software to that legal research capability. AI-assisted research is the most used within the co-counsel platform. Indeed, that's because you can access all of that Westlaw value from within the co-counsel system. 15,000 AI-assisted research runs within the platform, but then look down below, review documents where you ask questions of your documents. We're over 11,000 uses, summarizing documents over 6,000 and on down. Total usage to date, nearly 50,000 uses. And we're finding co-counsel is a workhorse because it can do these functions at a very large scale. And we'll talk about some stories where that really shines in a little bit. I mentioned sometimes we build our own internal solutions, and Prompt Composer is one of those shining stars. It's our firm's version of ChatGPT. Importantly, though, we don't allow it to be beholden to a particular vendor. So yes, we have OpenAI's traditional and chain of thought models, but we also have Anthropic's. And we wanted to maintain that flexibility so that we're always giving our staff the most up-to-date, best models in town, if you will. We just crossed over 150,000 uses since rolling this out, not even a year ago, an amazing platform. And last up to bat is Microsoft Copilot. It's integrated already in all of your Microsoft applications. It's a no-brainer to use generative AI with what's already shown on screen. Convenience is its main advantage in that space. You don't have to leave the application you're in. If you're in a Word document, you can interrogate the substance right then and there. If you're in a PowerPoint file, I mean, you can build a new PowerPoint file from a Word document, but indeed insert a slide with a graphic or modify the substance as needed within PowerPoint. And the list goes on. We're going to dive a little bit further into that, but look at that usage, also near almost 150,000 uses to date. And that was rolled out, I believe, in May of last year. A really powerful program. Follow me a bit more around those numbers. I mentioned 147,000 uses with Copilot. I want to lift the hood a bit more into how folks are actually squeezing value from that. Now, on the far left, there's a few stats there. 15,000 hours for time reclaimed by Copilot. And you may be thinking, what exactly is the number of minutes saved per use? Microsoft did have some studies in that space about 1.5 years ago. We do piggyback on that, 6 minutes on average for a use of Copilot, reclaim about 6 minutes on average. Based on that, we're hitting 15,000 hours reclaimed with that nearly 150,000 uses. But in the middle of your screen, you're seeing how that's actually breaking out. And look, generating email drafts is the main superstar in that space. Over 50,000 uses, nearly saving about 5,700 hours is a really big shining star there. And that's mirrored down below in this applications leveraging Copilot section. Outlook is definitely the heaviest used, but right there beside it is Copilot Chat. And it's often, surprisingly, a little used platform by so many of the Copilot users. It's the only version of accessing Copilot that lets you look across the Microsoft fabric, all of your SharePoint, OneDrive, and OneNote files, and PowerPoints, and emails. It's the only version of Copilot that can look across that landscape and support whatever it is you're trying to do. We'll talk about some use cases there, but man, Copilot's an amazing platform. You're seeing some growth that's linear. That's great. There are a couple of dips there you'll notice in November and December last year for the holidays, but seeing that linear adoption month over month has been really great. We do have a KPI about increasing this usage by 30% this year, and we're just excited to make that mark. Look here on this 2.2 million in productivity and the $951 of average savings per person per month in time reclaimed. That, again, you have to make a determination of what is the average hourly rate for an average Copilot user. But based on our usage, our values, our subjective values, we're over 2 million in value to the firm. Down to the very bottom, Microsoft tries to take it one step further and say, look, you're not factoring, though, lost productivity or opportunity costs that you would have sacrificed had you not had Copilot at your disposal. Because you are now using that Copilot system, you've leveraged your influence, your effectiveness, the value you bring to the table, and they're doing a multiple of that value, 2 to 3 times. Really incredible platform. Let's talk a little bit about how it can help you in your space. Copilot just came out with some awesome resources for the entire legal community, as noted earlier. A prompt engineering guide, which I know folks have been hungry for some time. You know, a good 30, 40-page document that takes you from A to Z, all about prompt engineering. It's an amazing resource. It is available in this presentation as an attachment, I believe. If you don't, for some reason, find that guide, tap me on the shoulder, put your questions in the Teams, into the chat. I will make sure you have that guide in your hands. They've also, though, rolled out this awesome scenario library portal. They're trying to make it real for the legal industry, take the guesswork out, really make it real for folks. How could Copilot work to transform my firm? They've given in that space some day in the life of storyboards and some scenarios. Let's talk about this guide first up to bat. I'm going to steal Microsoft's prompt engineering formula. It's as simple as a goal, context, your expectation, and the source of information the AI will use. That's the formula. There's no secret sauce to interacting with a large language model. I noted earlier, pretend it's a digital assistant at your side. And indeed, you might laugh, some on the call, it's as simple as that how would you interact with a human would be ideally the exact same way you'd interact with a large language model. What are you trying to achieve today? Is there any helpful context that you would give that human being to help them nail the assignment you're about to provide them? And then what are your expectations? Do you want something really long or very short? Do you want it in this format or that format? And then what are you going to offer that individual to help them really nail the assignment? All of those puzzle pieces make the perfect prompt. And let's see that in play. Here's an example pulled from their guide. You've got a goal. I want to generate 3 to 5 bullet points on the key issues. And the helpful context is that these bullet points are going to prepare me for a meeting with the client to discuss that strategy against some other party. I'm going to give you, and then here's your source, right? I want you to focus on emails and Outlook, Microsoft Teams chats, and put a bounding box. It needs to be since June and with this client. And then some clarity around the, what is the expectation exactly? I need it to be concise. Use simple language and an active voice so that I can get up to speed quickly. That's an awesome prompt, and it's no more secret sauce than that. Your goal, helpful context, what you're going to give it to help nail the assignment as a source or sources, and then any extra expectations you have. I want to move away from the guide for a second and jump into that scenario library portal. I mentioned there's this day in the life of slides. We love these. We use these in our training at the firm. We did do focus groups early on and built our own before these existed. But man, it's a breath of fresh air to see these coming down the pipes. They did roll them out for the legal industry. We're seeing on screen Amanda, a corporate counsel with Microsoft, in her day. But there are other industries right there in the portal. You can choose marketing and finance and HR. And they have the same day in the life of slides. It's an amazing training resource, but also to get the light bulbs going off in your mind on how this system could help you in your daily life. Here, we're seeing that Amanda uses it to catch up on email at 8 a.m. And look at this prompt down below. Summarize the recent emails regarding a specific item. Flag anywhere I'm specifically mentioned, highlighting any action items requested of me. That's it. Pretty simple prompt. And they're giving an example for every other one, drafting a memo, getting information out of a Word document. Really cool use case. I did mention in the legal portal, there's several other day in the life ofs. Here's Tomek, a paralegal. I won't burn the slide with all of the items, but he's recapping a meeting and using Teams to do that. In the meeting itself, he's asking Copilot questions, and he's drafting an email in Outlook. Very cool day in the life of slides. In the legal space specifically, they also offer a principal corporate counsel and 2 different product counsel attorneys. But don't be shy about trying out those other functions like HR, finance, et cetera, because there's the exact same slides for them as well. I did mention, though, in that portal, they're actually giving you real scenarios that can help transform your firm. I'm listing those on screen that exist today in advisory services. They've got several in the IP space. Using agents to detect infringements and automate enforcement actions, simplifying the registration process, getting quick legal guidance. I need to develop a compliance video. It'd be great if you can get me some scripting, some images to build into that content. And look at the contract space, managing the contract lifecycle by optimizing some workflows, tracking and approvals, et cetera, or automating those reviews using agents to look at risk and deviations from standards. Really great scenarios, and we're going to dive a little bit more deeply into one in particular, just to show you the value they're trying to stress. In the contract space, we're excited to actually experiment with this one near term, automating the contract review. And in this scenario, they give you that business case, so they're trying to help you on that journey. What's the vision? What's the business impact? Some key features that are going to be used. And then taking you into one more layer lower, how exactly will all of this function in a process? And they're calling attention to the specific product within Microsoft. So in Copilot, they're AI agents, which is hot off the press, and we're really excited to dive into that. You're using the agent for bringing in the contract, comparing it, doing some risk analysis, suggesting clauses. Last slide I want to show you here, they actually provide that engineering diagram that will help those technical folks really understand how these puzzle pieces are fitting together and working in sync. So really awesome resource. It just came out. It's for the legal industry, and they're trying to just show Copilot works for every industry, but in legal specific, here's some scenarios to consider on how to transform your firm relatively quickly with those specific areas. All right. I'm going to pivot away from that deeper focus on Copilot. I'm just going to talk about success stories that we've found at the firm with different platforms. The first up to bat is transcription. We found it's awesome to just take really old cursive, whether that's in an old deed or an old will, and ask the system to transcribe it. It does really well. We find that in a general use of this, it saves about 60% of one's time. Here's an example of that output. I would struggle a bit to read this cursive on screen, have to take my time, maybe use a zoom in with a magnifying glass on screen. But down below is an early transcription of that cursive, and it generally does great. A really cool use case. However, it doesn't have to be just text. We find there's huge value in transcribing audio. In this specific story, it not only saved us time, but it gave this awesome strategic advantage. Here's what went down. Late in the trial prep phase, 400 voicemails were suddenly appeared, and we were offered, what would you like to do? Everyone acknowledging it's very late in the game to see these 400 voicemails. Do we extend the duration to review these? Do we try to keep them out? Or do we admit them? The idea being, we have the tech and with our data science team, we have the technical prowess, the tool set at our tool belt. We can transcribe these voicemails and do analysis on that text really fast to find if there's any juice hiding in there that we can squeeze out. And betting that the other firm probably doesn't have that ability to do so quickly. We rolled the dice in that space, and it was a great win for our client, gave a huge strategic advantage. But man, what a great story about transcription giving us a technical leg up, a strategic leg up. Moving from transcription, I'd like to just touch on translation. Of course, we know AI can help us translate. One of the cooler uses I'm seeing, though, is when you translate and preserve the document's formatting. Our data science team did develop some capabilities in this space where if you've got a document like the one on screen with seals and bolded lines and numbered formatting and indentation, you can preserve all of that and just translate the text. And that's paid some dividends in different use cases, but a very cool type of translation is something we're really awesome. It was exciting to see that. Away from transcription and translation, sometimes when you're trying to do analysis on documents, the documents can just be too heavy, too complex, too nuanced for the AI system to digest in one fell swoop. Here's an example where we had a whole lot of finance agreements, and we needed to extract the terms of those. Now, there's a general T's and C's section on every single one, no problem. Your normal generative AI system would chew through that like butter. However, there's all these state nuanced exceptions, and every document contained different states. So that really made it a challenge for a very clear breakout of what the terms are by state. The AI was clearly struggling. Our approach here is to use AI to segment documents, and it does wonders. We trained a model, look through these agreements, find a state reference, take that, begin that section of text, and go until you find the next state. Take all that chunk of text and break it out into a table, identifying it by the state and the contract ID. And so as a result, maybe a contract had 30 state exceptions in a general terms and conditions section. We were building 31 documents, one with the general T's and C's, and then one document for every state exception. The beauty, you can then feed those in one at a time into a generative AI system. What's the term around this, around that? And it does an amazing job answering that question in a great table format. Really cool use case of segmenting your documents. In that same space, sometimes you're not wanting to break the document apart by finding, where's this term mentioned, and then take some string of text after that until you hit the next term of interest. Maybe what you're trying to do is something like, here's a form, and I need you to always be looking in specific spots, some specific locations within the form, to extract whatever's in that cell or area of text and put that into a table called this. We had a big lift here. 2,000 student loan borrower defense applications, 113 different fields. we needed to pull this information out, put it into a table so that we could do large mail merges to communicate in mass. Unfortunately, it would have taken about 1,700 hours to do that manually. We trained a model, said, look here for this, look there for that, look there for that, did an amazing job pulling this information into a table. So using generative AI to extract text in that way was awesome. I want to pivot now from segmentation or extracting text to searching. We all know generative AI can help us use natural language inquiries. We don't have to use those keywords anymore, but often maybe the extent of the imagination stops at, I've gotten this big set of documents, I've uploaded it to the search system, and I'm going to search through that. We had an awesome moment where labor and employment and banking and finance were frustrated with government databases that contained information they needed to regularly search. And we figured, why don't we take the information out of those databases that limit you to keywords and pull that out and put that into something like CoCounsel so we can use natural language to go hunting. That saves about 1,200 hours for labor and employment and 1,400 hours yearly for banking and finance. But it was an awesome workaround to get around limited search capabilities in large online repositories and leverage awesome technology in ways that weren't necessarily thought about in advance when the software was being developed. Really cool use of that. I'm going to move on to away from searching to analysis. Preparing for client matter reviews can be a bit, a very lengthy process if you have a lot of matters to deal with. Here, one partner was working with 170 different client matters and preparing for a really important meeting with the client to get them spun up on what activities are happening across this landscape. And we're using Prompt Composer to analyze billing narratives, sorted chronologically, sorted by matter, and tell a story around what's occurring in the past 30 days. That saves about 22 or 264 hours annually for that person. But indeed, it gave us insight that we really need to build a tool that does this out of the box and is designed around this purpose. Give it some large spreadsheet of narratives, and the system says, okay, I'll take each matter, separate that out, sort it chronologically, and then do the analysis, and then give that statement of what happened here, and I'll pin it to the others. So we're working through that, and we're excited for a system like that. But really cool use of the technology to help us get smarter, faster on some set of data. In that space, here was an awesome example around not working with billing narratives, but it was with a Department of Energy set of questions that were really heady stuff. Like, what's the future of rail technology and net zero emission propulsion in like 2045, 2050, 2055? Really, really in the weeds stuff about looking forward in that particular industry. Now, the senior counsel was super knowledgeable in that, would have been able to satisfy that need true and true, but using AI really gave them a leg up. And here's how we did that. The research and intelligence team was kind enough to pull 56 relevant articles where they definitely had some pointed information for some of those questions. Of course, not one article is going to nail it all, but every article we knew had some nuggets of information for some of those questions. We just used CoCounsel. We asked the questions that the government was asking, so it would go through each document. For many, there was nothing on point. But for those questions where it was very clear, the article speaking to that future, that future state, it really did summarize that information really well. But you're left with a large table, 56 rows, 16 questions, a lot of information. We used Prompt Composer at that point to pull it together. A simple prompt, like I have a column of information reflecting key substance found within several documents related to one question. Pull that information together into one comprehensive statement about that question. It did a wonderful job, saved about 25 hours in that use case, but it showed us this technology can help you get really smart really quickly on a large repository of documents. Moving away from research articles and billing narratives, now to contracts. It's the exact same technology. I have questions about the document at hand, but the questions, of course, change. Here, we had a client had seen a presentation we gave, and they were really interested in us using AI to analyze their contracts, but they were asking initially for no human review. Now, we did caution this is a bit early in the game to totally let those reins off. What if we base the agreement around that, but we take a statistically significant sample and do human review on those? They were very agreeable. We asked 27 questions across 269 contracts. Indeed, those are some of the questions asked. Does the document contain a provision explicitly and entirely dedicated to whistleblower rights? And there's two others on screen. Did a great job. We did human review on that sample, determining that the AI was accurate about 97% of the time. So that was a cool use case of the tech. Doesn't have to be, or it's not often that it's so simple as here's my contracts, here's my questions. Sometimes the data is not in a really good place to do that analysis. I mentioned earlier with that finance agreement set, we first had to segment them into pieces, segment each contract into several individual pieces. Here, there were several documents related to each property, and we needed to do some analysis on the leases related to those properties. But the only way the AI could do that well is if they understood the parent and child relationship to all of those files. The data science team again swooped in. We had 22,000 files by property. They helped us organize that using Python scripting and basically gave us 1,300 comprehensive contract files that then we ran those single documents through the AI saying, okay, what's these 12 provisions across these agreements? Noting that there's all these important attached documents that it would need to analyze to answer those questions correctly. Did a great job. This data science team support alone was about 190 hours, saving that file preparation time, but indeed it translated directly to client savings. So again, sometimes AI needs a little bit of a helping hand, and it was awesome to have that data scientist support on hand to make that happen. Now, you don't have to be limited to a few hundred contracts. Sometimes you can take thousands of documents and ask those same questions. In the litigation space, we had 1,800 documents given to us by opposing counsel. Now the legal team had already gone through and done to a significant degree the full review that was required, but they were really wanting to use AI. Are there any silver bullets that might be in there that we missed? We just simply uploaded the documents and asked our questions. For example, does the document show an employee of company A explicitly declaring that they agreed to hire company B, accept company B's services, or explicitly agreed to have company B do the work? And the AI system will do great, saying nothing relevant, and then boom, here's something of interest. Indeed, for this specific one, there was no silver. It was good to see that there were no critically missed silver bullets, but it really gave us confidence in their team's initial assessment. You can flip that. There's a lot of stories where it does actually call attention to nuggets of information that might have been overlooked. So it gives a great second set of eyes, if you will, to these reviews. But it doesn't always have to be late in the game. Sometimes you want that AI to be the first to bat. Here, we had over 500,000 documents across several matters for a client, several different cases. And there were several pieces where that some documents required inspection before production to avoid disclosing surprises. Others needed urgent relevance assessment for litigation. Others required a really specific set of answers around some compounds toxicity and the company's knowledge of that. So there's different perspectives for this 500,000 documents that need to be satisfied. But we used CoCounsel and worked through that information. It was awesome because it allowed us to enable the client to reduce the first phase of review in relativity. Instead of this very large set of documents that would have been very expensive to review, potentially offshored, because keyword searches would have exposed that many documents, we were able to say, for your first review set, generative AI is indicating these are your key documents. And it really let them focus that in so that they weren't spending so much at the outset. It didn't avoid the need for that review, but it definitely gave us a means to prioritize. And that was exactly what the client needed in that moment in time. Asking your documents questions does not need to be limited to contracts or leases or billing narratives. You can dive into IP-related information. Here, we had 128 patents, and we just wanted to understand which patents had very key information we wanted to dive into. So we asked questions like, does the document discuss any system that determines or measures health vitals or metrics based on an individual's use of a sanitary facility? Now, there were a lot of other questions there, but that's just the example we wanted to call attention to. It was awesome. The system goes through and does an awesome job saying, you know, hey, this particular patent deals with this type of a measurement, et cetera. And it gives you a really good map, if you will, of that landscape and what documents have what information on point. Where we're really excited to go is in trend analysis, because again, if you can ask every single patent a question, you can then put that information into a table and do some really cool analysis on that table. So here, we're ramping up to do about 1,500 patents, and we're asking questions like, what is the circumstances that led to the need for this invention? Or what improvement does this invention provide that was previously unavailable? Asking questions like that and getting that information into a table, you can, again, do that analysis and see that big trend so that you could be like, okay, so what are the massive changes in the environment driving the need for inventions? This. Okay, so for that one, what exactly is the competition saying was missing and they had to invent something to fill? Really cool analysis because you're just asking your documents questions. And we're excited to pull the thread on that space. Away from asking your documents questions, AI does an amazing job at coding. Here is an example of that. I love this one because it kind of used image recognition and it gave the code. The data science team was faced with a very tight timeline. Here's a whole lot of data. You need to visualize it so you can tell a story about that data. Again, the timeline was so tight. The data science team knew the visual that would nail that storytelling, but man, that would have taken some time to code, iterate, refine, test. Wouldn't it be amazing if that digital assistant, I hand them a handwritten image of the type of graph or visual I'm imagining building, and then it says, okay, I see what you're trying to do. I see the data, a sample of the data you've given me. Here's code that would read that data and give you that visual. That's exactly what the system did. We love it because it gives durable code. We've reused that 3 times now when we do refreshing on the updates and saved about 40 hours total. But what an awesome use case of using generative AI to help code. And again, in that bespoke solution space, we did find the real estate team was sometimes going through these really meaty real estate documents with a whole lot of hyperlinks, like nearly 100 hyperlinks where somebody would have to right-click, save the target as to some location with some naming convention. What if a tool could go through and use Gen AI to find all these URLs, anything that looks like a hyperlink, anything that looks like a website, go to that, pull together some user interface that says, look, this is what I found, this is what I'm about to name it, where do you want to save it? We built that. It saves about 77 hours a month, but that's the first step in a much larger workflow disruption we're working toward. Really exciting use case on a bespoke solution. All right, this is probably my favorite slide in the deck because it's so hot off the press and it's a space I've been really excited about seeing, and it feels like it's kind of here. We are seeing a really rapid and admittedly unexpected adoption rate of generative AI and e-discovery, way faster than anyone could have predicted. One of the key requirements to using this technology responsibly is iterative prompt refinement. The actual document analysis using generative AI and e-discovery might just take a few days, but the prompt refinement, seeing what comes out, reading what the AI is telling you, why it drew those conclusions, modifying your prompt and rerunning can take way more than that. In this particular one, I think it was like a 5-day review process, but it took about 10 days to work through the prompting. The reality is the more you iterate, the better the results are going to be in this space, making these tools way more effective and accurate than traditionally assisted review or TAR. A major advantage, as mentioned earlier, is that the generative AI explains why a document is deemed responsive, not just tagging it as responsive. That level of insight alone is a big leap forward in improving accuracy, because if you can understand why the Gen AI made some determination, just like working with a new associate, you have line of sight to how would you coach them to change their logic so that it gives perhaps a better output the next round. So it's a really great, it naturally helps you iterate and improve the output. This was actually put to the test recently. We took over a matter for another firm. After about 2 years of discovery and several court citations to the firm and the client due to discovery issues, we had this on our plate, and unfortunately, the court was not open to give an extension. We had 2 weeks to search all servers of 2 million emails. Now, we did use some keyword searching and some analytics to reduce that down to 400,000 documents. Humans took on 20,000, leaving a remaining 380. Now, relativity's error system handled that. It was an amazing output, and that was done in 3 days, tagging not only the responsiveness for the documents, but the exact issues that they were responsive to, something the court asked to provide and something that could not have been done with previous technology. So it's an amazing platform, but word of caution, it's not a silver bullet using generative AI in the e-discovery space, especially when you're working with roughly scanned documents, roughly scanned images, other non-readable formats. And importantly, there was Blackwell law supporting the use of TAR, but there is no such law yet for using generative AI for responsiveness document review. So what that means is, if you decide to do this, you've got to ensure you can demonstrate a reasonable inquiry was made using generative AI. But man, what an amazing time we are in to see this start to work. Us into another amazing space that we're seeing, chain of thought models. Now, a chain of thought model, I'm showing some information on screen. The first one up to bat was OpenAI's O1, but imagine you're solving a puzzle or working through a math problem. You can't just answer, you can't just guess the answer. You've got to think through it step by step by step. And that is exactly what these chain of thought models do. They create an internal dialogue on, okay, to work through this, I'm going to need to do this first, and then that, and then this, which is different than your traditional LLM. So GPT-4 would be an amazing predictor of what comes next in a sequence of text, like writing an email, tell a joke. It's designed to produce the most likely text based on patterns it's learned. But if you ask it to solve a really complex problem, like calculate out a list of critical contract dates or analyze very nuanced logic challenges, it'll skip important reasoning steps, guessing its answers based on probability. Chain of thought models, on the other hand, go step by step by step, ensuring that the solution makes sense in the end. It's basically like having a careful problem solver instead of a really fast guesser. And that is exactly what the chain of thought is, those links in the chain. A quick example of that classic logical riddle that we might all work through, solve the 4 numbers in the correct order. Clue number 1, 9825. One number is correct, but it's in the wrong location. Clue number 2, 1937, and so on. To work through that, a traditional model looks at it, it's creating plausible looking logic, but it's completely divorced from the actual steps needed to solve the problem. Unfortunately, the model doesn't have a concept of reasoning, only in producing text that seems reasonable following the prompt. So that is why it often fails with doing math and solving those types of problems. But look at the steps done for it with a chain of thought model. Apologies for the graininess. But it is going through this step by step by step, using those logical connections from the prior step to help support it with the next. It's an amazing type of technology, and you'll see, for that particular problem, the answer was 3481. O1 nailed it. But the bottom line is, when should you consider a chain of thought model? These models are awesome when you need logical reasoning or multi-step problem solving. When should you consider a traditional model? As noted earlier, telling jokes, but these models are truly less expensive, they're faster, they're amazing for writing polished text. So draft an email, summarize the document, ask for general thought partnership, consider sticking with the traditional model. The general rule of thumb, logic steps, chain of thought, where logic is needed, but otherwise a great go-to should be a traditional model. We find sometimes you get the best of both worlds when you combine them. So use that chain of thought model to get the nitty-gritty details from that really complex question you might be asking about the, comparing the two documents and their nuanced differences or doing the math problem. And then use a traditional model, say, clean this up into a very short, concise email summarizing the outcome for this individual. So you can kind of make them both work together. We have a spotlight in this exact space. Recently, we were using a chain of thought model within Prompt Composer, specifically from Claude, from Anthropic, Claude's 3.7 Sonnet thinking model. And we wrote a very long prompt in partnership with Thomson Reuters, specifically Ken Lam, an awesome prompt engineer with them. But this prompt, admittedly, was about 2.5 pages long. And the reason why is because it needed to understand very, very carefully those 4 steps shown on screen. First, I need you to identify how the contract defines business versus calendar days. Not every contract's the same. When you have that information, think about the governing law for this agreement. What is that governing law's normal set of holidays? 2, identify the deadlines that are meaningful. Extract every deadline you see in this agreement. I also want those that are floating or contingent on other ones. When you note it, note the task, the responsible party, and the contract section that's found. 3, calculate each deadline, right? So I don't want to burn the slide and read through each one, but you're seeing how logically the model has to work through each and every step. And that 2-page prompt nails it. It really does an awesome job. Of course, a human doing a first run and generative AI doing a first run are prone to error. You can't just, say it's going to get it accurate every time. You have to have that human review element. However, what a leg up in time savings there. It has driven our firm to consider how we're going to build an easy button platform. Instead of saying to folks, save your favorite prompt, here you have a 2-page prompt. That's too much, right, for your average individual. So we just want to make easy buttons. I'm in real estate. I need a critical dates list. When they click a button, it just says, great, where's your real estate PSA? Here it is. What's the effective date? Here it is. And the analysis takes the rest on because it already has the prompt baked in. It knows the exact output it needs to do and just provides that. So we're focusing on that easy button platform now, but man, what an amazing use of chain of thought models. We're really excited where the future takes us here. All right, I'm going to take us into using the advent of generative AI and outside counsel guidelines. We're finding clients are, again, as noted earlier from Thomson Reuters' slide, they're really putting a healthy amount of pressure on firms to be innovative and more efficient. Many clients kind of stop there. They're like, look, you have to really lean into this space. That's on one end of the spectrum of what we kind of see with terms. And indeed, as you kind of go along the opposite direction of that spectrum, many clients encourage use of AI, but they really want that first talk to us. And then we'll let you guys, the leash off, if you will, to give that overarching approval. Other clients further along that spectrum will say, definitely first talk to us, but we want you to have that conversation on each and every matter. And some clients are a little bit further along that spectrum and say, not only on every matter, really for every single use you intend to use it on, to have that near time conversation. On a side note, there are some requirements we're seeing around regular audits, regular reporting, and a few clients on the very other end of the spectrum where it's not really an invitation to a conversation, it's just full stop, don't use it. Albeit those aren't seen too often. Usually clients fall within the other areas. Now, regardless of wherever the client is on that spectrum, the reality is every single one of them are trying to put up a barrier to make sure, not a barrier, but a gateway to make sure that the firm they're relying on wields that technology competently, ethically, fairly, appropriately, and that they won't be charged for time saved. That we find that those are really big thoughts top of mind. So our approach to gaining that overarching approval, because yes, the conversation is healthy, but wouldn't it be great if we could get them, our clients to be, like an agreed upon partner. We will use the technology wisely in your representation, and what questions can we help provide answers to, or information we can give that would make you more comfortable in that space. Our approach is to first kind of give that highlight in an engagement letter that we're soon modifying, explaining our use of AI. But an important second step is that extra level of detail. What are the platforms we're currently using? What do we have zero data retention agreements with them? Do we prohibit model training? What about a firm policy? Do you have one around the use of AI, and how are your folks trained? And can you guarantee that human review is applied to generative AI outputs? These are important elements of information that we want to share with our clients. And then all of that is in an attempt to have that conversation. Together, we feel, often we can remove some of that concern by having that one-on-one conversation, addressing IT concerns, and even interestingly, in those moments, we find that the clients themselves are wielding many of the same platforms. And that is also a way of greasing the skids, if you will, to allowing us to use this tech in their representation. A couple of thoughts around OCGs in the space. Everyone really needs to be aligned with what is machine learning, what is artificial intelligence. Indeed, linear regression models in Excel are technically AI machine learning. So just be really, really clear. What is it that we're talking about? Is it generative AI specifically? Note that some software is taking away that proactive control of use of generative AI. We saw this with Copilot first. When you open a Word document, the system will automatically summarize that Word document using generative AI. Still securely, but indeed it is using an LLM across that substance. So note that with your clients, have that open dialogue, and be aware of moments where software is doing that without proactive intent. And again, try to get that overarching approval. And we think that that's the best relationship we can give. Very informative, but also you have a blessing of sorts to use the tech as appropriate to serve their needs. In the same space, the final spotlight I wanted to highlight was using Prompt Composer for outside counsel guideline reviews. This platform has done a lot of wonders for a group that really needed some fast support around resourcing to work through these moments in time. Prompt Composer does an awesome job to say, okay, here's the client's proposed terms. Here's your targeted playbook. Comparing this information, I'm going to take a first stab, if you will, at this review, and call attention to very key areas that should be focused on, such as consider boilerplate responses here, here, and here. These are issues that really should deserve some conversation with the client, perhaps some billing, misalignment with the billing intent. And then also invoking the right subject matter experts at the right time to say, hey, this term appears to talk about this. We'd really love your input on that. Really awesome pivot to what we were used to working with before, which was a system using some natural language processing, like, oh, this appears to belong with this group, and then blast it out far and wide, often mistakenly. This is a much more surgical procedure. We save about 5 to 10 hours per use, but what an amazing use of the technology. And it was just so fast because we had the platform pre-built. Some final thoughts around the use of generative AI. It is definitely a muscle, not so much just software. If you use ChatGPT or you use your firm's approved generative AI tools, your muscle will get stronger and stronger, just like going to a gym. And indeed, that second bullet point, there is no secret sauce to the prompting. Yes, that 2-page one to build a critical dates list, it might be healthy to work with a colleague that's used to generating pretty technical prompts, but for your normal go-tos, summarize this email. What's the next set of questions I should ask in this meeting? Feel free to just use natural language. And treat the system as though you're speaking with a colleague. That goal, context, here's the source I'm gonna give you, the information I'm gonna give you, and the expectation I hope to have back. Lastly, you can use AI like a search engine. Sure, legal research, we do it all the time. can an individual in this state do this? But its real superpower we're finding is in that ongoing dialogue, taking the AI in every step of your journey for most of your tasks throughout the day. It really can accelerate your effectiveness in an organization, really giving you that leverage, working with you rather than a swoop in, ask a question, get a response.